Pittsburg ISD unanimously approved calling a school bond election after the previous bond failed. As KLTV7's Christine Guevara reports, the district will ask voters to consider a $93.8 million package.
After last year's failed election, Pittsburg ISD has repackaged the bond, where voters will decide between two propositions or vote for both.
We went back to the community, and we still have needs that we need to address, and we want to listen to the community.
Proposition A is $74.4 million. A brand new high school would be built, plus a bus road to connect the other campuses. And currently, the campus has multiple buildings and exterior doors, so safety and security improvements would be made.
And put everything more in proximity to each other, so the students will be in a more self-contained building that's easier to monitor.
Fencing would also be built around the campus. Proposition B is $19.4 million and would address the junior high. Gates would be added around. Sixth grade would move over to the junior high from the intermediate campus, and a new cafeteria would be constructed.
The current cafeteria, which is in the middle of this wing, would be what's reconstructed for new classrooms and a life skills unit, and then the sixth grade wing would be added on to the end in the back of the junior high.
The tax impact would be about $16 more per month for a home valued at around $99,000 if Proposition A passes. For Proposition B, the impact would be around $4 more. If voters approve the total $93.8 million bond, the impact would be about $20. Christine Guevara, KLTV 7 News.
Early voting begins Monday, April 22nd and ends April 30th. Election Day is Saturday, May the 4th.